So let me start by introducing Dr. Shane Needham. Dr. Needham received his BS in chemistry from Washington State University in Pullman and his PhD in chemistry from the University of Rhode Island. Dr. Needham is co-founder and chief scientific officer of Alturas Analytics right here in Moscow, Idaho. Alturas Analytics Incorporated is a leader in the area of bioanalytics and known for their high-level science and problem-solving skills. Shane has authored or co-authored more than 100 publications in the area of liquid chromatography mass spectrometry. And in 2004, Alturas Analytics was voted as one of the fastest growing companies in the United States by Incorporated 500, or 5,000, excuse me. His laboratory leads in the area of dry blood spot analysis, microflow, mass spectrometry, and large molecule detection to support marker research. So Shane and I recorded an interview a couple weeks ago, and so we're going to play back that interview now. So Shane, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to sit down and talk with us and kind of share with us some of your experiences as an entrepreneur and as a researcher. First of all, your education is real impressive. You got your bachelor's from WSU Pullman in chemistry and went on to get your PhD from Rhode Island in chemistry. So in those experiences, were you exposed to any entrepreneurs or any kind of business owners that sort of lit a fire in your mind or in your heart to kind of go out and be an entrepreneur yourself?
Wow, that's interesting. Not necessarily. I can say that the biggest entrepreneur that I was exposed to was as a child. It was my grandfather. He actually only had an 8th grade education, but he worked in the construction business and ended up owning, I don't know, multiple dump trucks and worked on all kinds of construction projects around the Pacific Northwest. When I actually got my education at WSU and University of Rhode Island, I actually also, when I was going to University of Rhode Island, I was also working full-time at Pfizer in Groton, Connecticut. And that was their major research headquarters then at that time. And again, it was not necessarily that I was exposed to entrepreneurs. There were maybe a few, but when I think back on my life, and I think when I finally had the journey to start really my own thing 21 years ago now, I look back and it's like, well, who influenced me on that? And I remember it was my grandfather. I remember sitting on his lap when I was like 8 or 9 years old, and he would do these calculations on paper and stuff. And I had no idea how big the numbers were, but they were big enough I couldn't read them when I was 8. And it was really interesting, but I didn't realize how important that interaction or that relationship was until actually, shoot, it was probably 4 or 5 years into my entrepreneurial experience. And then of course I thought back, okay, yeah, there's a few other people. I can actually name them: David Bleasner, David Isom, Analytical Sales and Service, and Dave Bleasner, Delphi Analytical. They were later on, right before I started and I decided to be an entrepreneur, they were really, I guess, very influential in saying, hey, here's what's going to happen. You're going to be okay. Here's what you do. And they're still mentors of mine. So thank you very, very much, Dave and Dave.
So Dave and Dave, that's funny. They share a name, and they shared a spot sort of in your memory and in your path, as well as guidance. And so, what were some of the things that they helped you overcome, or some of the fears that maybe they helped assuage when you were approaching sort of becoming an entrepreneur yourself?
Well, I'll never forget an email, and it's a typical entrepreneurial struggle where you're wondering how you're going to pay bills, how you're going to get revenue, how you're going to get everything done when you do get projects, all the typical entrepreneurial struggles, how you're going to hire people when you're busy enough, how are you going to wear so many different hats and get the job done and do a good job with everything. And I can remember a phone call. It would have been in the year late 2000 or early 2001. And it was a phone call that I had with David Bleasner, actually. And just a great man. I just talked to him a couple of weeks ago as well, and he's doing very well. But he actually followed up with an email. He says, Shane, I could hear it in your voice. He said, everything's going to be okay. And I just want you to remember, there's a great quote. He was in the Marines. He was a captain in the U.S. Marines. So he knew the history of the Navy and the Marines and all that. He said, I want to give you a quote from John Paul Jones, which is like the founder of the U.S. Navy. That's what some people say, right? He said, those who don't risk don't win. And I will never forget that. And I tell budding entrepreneurs that to this day.
Yeah, you got to have some skin in the game, right? And I think the entrepreneurial mindset is to have not just a little skin in the game, but to like put your whole hide in the game and really go after what you believe in. And so during your time at Pfizer, I imagine that you were doing a lot of research, and you were probably how many of the publications, the more than 100 publications that you've authored or co-authored, how many of those came from your time at Pfizer?
Well, I think it's more than 200 now, but I don't know, probably at this point, I was at Pfizer for 7 or 8 years, and I've been, with in a different, with my current company, Alturas Analytics, for now over 21. So obviously there's more publications now, but my original ones came from Pfizer. Even before I had a PhD, I was doing some research and some publications, which was actually very novel at that time. It's not usually that somebody at a PhD at a without a PhD at a large organization had the opportunity to publish. I was just with a great, great group. I was with Hassan Fuda. I was with Mark Cole. They are great people to be around. At Pfizer, I worked on serial number one instrument, LCMS, from SciEx, the first one that was installed in industry. And that's how that group was. They were just very innovative. They led the field of LCMS, and that's what I started the company on. I brought all the experience from Pfizer and started the Alturas Analytics as a lead scientist, and started the company on that foundation of doing LCMS bioanalysis.
And I love that story too, because you came from, a very densely populated East Coast area, and brought back a lot of that expertise and that technical capability right back to Moscow, Idaho. So, tell me a little bit. Obviously, you were familiar with the area, having gone to WSU Pullman and everything, but what else led you to come back to Moscow, Idaho?
Yeah, well, a lot. Idaho is a great place to do business, and also it's a great quality of life to not only raise my own family, but to attract, young scientists or non-scientists. We hire non-scientists too, and have them stay here with that same quality of life. We visit a lot of places. I visit a lot of places, and I'm going to be going to 3 or 4 different locations: Orlando, Philadelphia, the East Coast, over the next couple of months. And I visit those places, and you talk to people and you tell them about your quality of life, and they ask you, well, what is your commute like? I mean, right. It's funny, isn't it? We laugh.
Yeah.
Yeah. We laugh. And it's almost like you give them this stare, and it's like 5 minutes, it's like, and that's either on a bike or in a car, 5 minutes from my house, and that's the routine. Whereas, as well as I do, Jeremy, that a lot of these people are sometimes commuting 1.5, 2 hours each way. And so we give that quality of life to our employees and our team members. And that's one thing that really attracted me to Moscow, Idaho. And Idaho is also a great place to do business. But obviously we have the university setting. That's very important. The majority, over 90% of our personnel have a degree, whether it be master's degree, bachelor's degree, or PhD from either Washington State University or University of Idaho. And I'm so proud of that. That's just really awesome. Everything happens for a reason, right? And I graduated a long time ago. You'll notice the gray hair. But if my company would have existed when I graduated from Washington State University, I'm not sure I would have ever left. And I think that's great. And it's great for the team members, and it's great for the organization. And so it's really a symbiotic relationship that I'm just very grateful for.
Well, obviously, what you guys are doing at Alturas is attracting people not only from U of I and from WSU, but also from all over the place, from all over the country, and business from all over the world. So, how has working as an entrepreneur affected your family life? Obviously, you guys have a good quality of life here, living in Moscow, and you've got 4 kids. Is that right?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. So great place to raise a family, but how has being a business operator, how has that changed? Or, obviously over time, you've probably gone through a lot of different phases with the business, and how would you contrast that with your time working at Pfizer?
Yeah, well, I think no matter what, when you're a driven and dedicated individual, there's always going to be this, what a lot of people like to call a work-life balance. I'm not a fan of that term, especially as an entrepreneur, because my life is being an entrepreneur and my children and family are a part of that. It's not a work-life balance. It's all intertwined. Sometimes one's priority, sometimes the other one's priority. And if the family understands that when they're truly, truly behind you, because it also gives them a lifestyle that they're able to afford as well. And so, I think if I tell another story is, if you're going to become an entrepreneur, you have to get used to the grind that we like to say. I also have a background in wrestling, and wrestlers use that term a lot. They call it the grind, and that's going to be the case. And so those first 5, 6, 7, 8 years, I have 4 children, all the way from graduated with master's degrees recently to all the way to a 13-year-old. And so those different ranges, for my first two, I didn't see a lot of their milestones. I just didn't. I wasn't there for it. Now my second two, there's a spread on those ages, as I just referred to, and they are my children are my biggest accomplishment. Berlin is my only daughter. She's the oldest, and then Britain, and then Scotland, and then Finland. Yes, I love their names. We did name them after countries and places. But I said with my second two, or my last two, I said, that's not going to happen again. And so the business was built up at that point where team members could really run a lot of the day-to-day operations, and I could actually step away more. Now, do you know how hard that is for an entrepreneur
Right.
right? Who started it? Now you have to delegate and rely on others. And what I can say now is I have the flexibility, and I still have 2 teenage sons at home, and we have a great time. I spend more time with them than I've ever spent with all my children combined. And it's amazing that I'm able to do that. And it's because I was an entrepreneur. I spent a lot of hours in the lab. I spent a lot of hours traveling. I mean, there was one year that I was gone more than 125 nights away from home because I had to. That was when the economy dipped, and we had to do that to survive. So guess who they sent on the road? Me.
Yeah.
And so, and I think I flew 200 and some thousand miles that year or something. And so, but it was all worth it, because now I've always been grateful for my life and always lived the life that I've wanted to. But now there's so many other opportunities. And I'm talking about one business right now. I have since in the last year, I've started 2 other businesses, and one's a scientific consulting company. One's a capital company to help other founders and entrepreneurs get started off the ground. And I'm really excited about this. I am in the works with somebody who's very special to me. You know who you are. We are starting a foundation. We don't know what we're going to call it yet, and it's going to support military, higher education, and wrestling. And so those 3 things combined, and some of them are going to be intertwined. And I already have some relationships with wrestling scholarships and so on and so forth, and some endowments and so on and so forth. And so that's super exciting too. But all that is because I decided to take a risk 21 years ago. And now I'm really, really able to give not only to my family, my boys, but other people, the relationships in my life, but also to higher education, to the military, to wrestling schools or wrestling scholarships, and things that I've always been passionate about. So very, very grateful for that. How is it different from Pfizer, you ask? Pfizer, my experience at Pfizer was a little bit different than anybody's. And here's why. Because I would work my 40, 50, 60 hours during the week. And then on the nights and on the weekends, I would do my PhD. So it was just all one big blur to me. And would I do it any other way? Not at all. It was a way for me to get experience while I was getting my PhD. So when I graduated, I not only had an opportunity to start something, I had many other job offers as well. And so I had a whole, a plethora of options. And again, I was very, very grateful for that, to be able to support my family in that way.
Well, and what an interesting way to be able to give back, following a successful business and following your years of experience to generate and develop your own foundation to help support the causes that you are personally passionate about. I think that's just a great facet to what you're able to do with the tools and assets that you've developed through entrepreneurship. So how has your work with the CPSA Foundation informed your desire to kind of move forward with your own foundation to help folks who are interested in some of the same areas that you're interested in?
Yeah, I'm not involved in much in the CPSA Foundation as much anymore. I was one of the founding members, and it was one of the things that said, "Hey, and it was 3 or 4 people that got together and said, "Hey, this is what we're passionate about. Let's start a foundation." And it got my wheels moving, right? And so absolutely. I mean, it's like, what's the term they use? Success begets success. And so once you've done something, then you do it again. And it's not, I never want to use the word easy. It's never easy being an entrepreneur. It's never easy being, starting a foundation. It's not, especially when you want to do it the right way. But you're never starting from scratch again. You're starting from experience. And that is just a key to me. And that's why, you know, I don't know how many years I have left, and I'm always living my life to the fullest. But my second half of life, if that's what I want to call it, and I hope I live that many years, is going to be so much better than my first. I mean, I'm just very, very excited for the future, very grateful for the future. And I know the plan is really, really good.
Well, it sounds very, very exciting, and I'm looking forward personally to watching it unfold and seeing how your efforts will continue to impact our community here. So of course, realizing that you're very busy and you've got, multiple businesses to help attend to and to help grow, what are some of the activities that, there's a parable, you have to take time to sharpen the saw so that you can continue to run the sawmill, right? You got to shut down every once in a while so you can sharpen the saw. So what are some of the activities that you would recommend entrepreneurs invest their time in, their personal time in?
That's I like that question. And for those of you who know me, and certainly if you just do a Google search of me, you can even find this information. But one of the things that I do, and I think one of the things that entrepreneurs can get caught up with is, what would I say, not shutting off their brain, not shutting off their mind. Okay. And a lot of people can get caught up with this. I don't care if you're a professor at a university, or if if you're a full-time mom, which is just lovely. I mean, that's great, but you can't shut your mind off. And one of the things that's really been my way to shut my mind off pretty much every day is going to the gym and exercising and lifting weights. And that is just a place where it's my solitude. It's my place where I've lately started finally kind of working out regularly with somebody, but usually I'm in the zone, I'm alone, and I've got my earbuds in, and I'm zoned out. Does my mind still wander? Yes. I still think about business. I still think about science. I still think about my children, those types of things, and my relationships. But it is one of those places where it's just a really, really good place to decompress, reload, re-energize.
Well, and it seems like you've built that space and time into your business structure and into the expectations of those around you that say, hey, this is my time. I need to be able to keep this time for me. And I need to be able to know that this is time that I can just focus on myself and focus on recharging. And so, of course, I think that probably bleeds through into your organization or your organizations that you're in charge of and that you interact with. So what kind of culture exists in Alturas, and kind of how did you establish that good company culture?
Yeah. One of the first things that, of course, I'm well read. I read lots of books. I mean, about how to lead, one of the things that was very important for me is I was also a wrestling coach for about 10 years. I coached my sons. My son was one of the only 4-time state placers in high school. He's only one of the two from Moscow High School in Idaho. And being a coach, when I started reading these coaching books, like, hey, how do I make this work? How do I motivate these kids? How do I, get them to be better, get them to love it as much as I do? Those types of interactions. I was reading these coaching books, and I'm like, wait a minute, this doesn't apply just to athletes. This applies to everybody. Everybody's a part of a team. Everybody's coaching. Everybody, a supervisor is a coach. A manager is a coach. I mean, that's what they are. And that's how we have to look at them. Not really somebody to be told what to do, but somebody that can be inspired upon, can be looked upon, aspired to, and lead, truly lead. Let somebody else, you lead them, by letting them do their thing, letting them be passionate about what they're doing. And so I'm writing a book about it right now, actually, and I can actually talk about it because it's actually trademarked, but it's called Fact. I don't know when it's going to come out, but we're starting to write it now. But it's basically fact, FACT. Those 4 words right there, or those 4 letters, FACT, can be easily describable and broken down into how to motivate a team. And so it's a really easy read. It's going to be an easy read. I'm going to be interviewing coaches from around the world and business leaders from around the world. I already have some of them already in line. And it's a really good book on just how to motivate people, not just necessarily a wrestler or a basketball player or a football player, but people. And it works not only for athletes, but for organizations such as a business or a political organization, even, or higher education.
Yeah, and I think there's a lesson in itself right there, is that every business is a team, and that you have to rely on other people, that you have to build trust in, and that you have to be able to, find those places where you can let go of some of the control and trust other people to do their thing and to take it up and to be successful on their own.
Yeah,
So I think that,
absolutely.
I think that's a lesson in and of itself. A lot of the time people get real scared when it's their baby, and how do I start to invite other people in, and how do I start to let
It's
some of that
true.
go?
It's true. You got to set your ego aside. That's very hard for an entrepreneur who's used to doing everything themselves and trusting themselves, And so trust is huge in an organization, and integrity. That's something we really pride ourselves on in all of my organizations, for sure. And one of the things that, when I was coaching kids, but also it matters for team members as well. And it's part of our values is you you look for attitude and train for the skill. And so I'm just going to give a wrestling example, because I've coached hundreds of wrestlers, of kids. And I would rather have a kid that has seriously no athletic background, but willing to work.
Mhm.
He might not be athletic. He or she might not be athletically gifted, but they're passionate and they have perseverance. And those are the people that have that grit. Those are the people who are going to succeed. Is the one that keeps saying, Coach, what do I do to get better? Coach, how can I get better? How can I get better? It's sometimes by hiring an Einstein in your organization, if it doesn't fit the culture, you're really doing yourself a disservice. Doesn't
Yeah.
matter if they're the smartest person in the world. If they're not willing to be coachable and willing to learn your way of that organization that works for your organization with their input, of course, it's not going to work out very well. So hire for attitude, train for skill.
I think that's a great tagline. I should put that on my business card. So we're about out of time, but if there was one additional piece of information or one additional recommendation you would give to college graduates interested in becoming an entrepreneur, what would you tell them?
Yeah, I'm involved in WSU and U of I's entrepreneur programs. I listen to a lot of them. I do judging contests, and one of the things I see is that what the first thing you want to do is get background and experience in what you're going to be doing. And I'll just give an example. If you're going to be a scientist, go run a scientific laboratory. Okay. And you can learn entrepreneurial skills later. You can learn on the fly. You can actually go back and get some more secondary education or something like that, to where you can learn those skills. But being necessarily taught right away to be an entrepreneur without background and experience in the field that you're going to be in, that's usually not the case. Do I wish everybody could be a Mark Zuckerberg and a Jeff Bezos? Yes. But you know what? Let's be honest. That's not the case. Usually the person, if they want to go into business and they want to own a coffee shop, go work in a coffee shop.
Mhm.
Go work in a coffee shop. Even if you have a bachelor's degree, go work in a coffee shop, then learn how it operates, learn the operations, learn the logistics, and then start your own thing. And so engineer, same way. If you're going to be an engineer and you want to start your own business, go do engineering. And then maybe even as you do that, get the entrepreneurial experience and the more formal education. I officially have never had a business course. I don't think so at the college level anyway. But I can tell you this, when the economy tanked in 2008, 2009, I read more MBA type books and put more things in place at my organization to save it than I guess I could say I earned my MBA by fire. And so that's the cool thing about whether it be a bachelor's degree or a master's or a PhD, is once you have a degree, you've shown you can teach yourself. So keep learning. I've told people I will be learning every day till the day I die. If I'm not learning anymore, then I'm 6 feet under.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's great advice, and great advice to help people stay youthful in their approach, not just to business, but to science and to life itself, right?
Of course.
So Shane, thank you so much. And those of you who are watching, please hold and stay on the line for live Q&A that'll follow this recording. And Shane, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you for the opportunity.
All right, you guys. Yeah, I mean, I guess one of the things that I would love to hear a little bit more about, Shane, is kind of growing your team. The first couple of steps that you had to do to grow your team around your idea of growing this company in Moscow, Idaho, and how you kind of started to invite people to the party. Kind of, we talked a couple of times about that in the interview, and how important team building was, and how you were kind of nervous to have people come on board and that sort of thing. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that, and about how those first relationships developed, and that type of thing.
Well, wow. Certainly so many things have developed over even the last couple of weeks, Jeremy. So I'm now starting another business in a couple more states. And so not only so now it's like 4 businesses in the last year that I'm going to actually start. So I'm not going to just pertain to, for example, Arcturus Analytics. That's just one of my businesses, but I also have Needham Scientific. That's a consulting scientific company and business company. I have Needham Capital that actually is capitalizes upon biotech and biopharma startups. And they're actually doing that now, and a couple of other businesses as well. So I'm going to talk about all of those. And just because whether you're building a team in the military or whether you're building it in a business, the concepts are all the same. Or even, we heard the interview, even a wrestling team, you have to surround yourself with the right coaches, the right assistant coaches. That's like managers and supervisors and directors. And then give the athletes and the students or the team members enough autonomy to make things happen. So you want to, what you can't do, a lot of people say, well, it's important to have the right culture. And here's the bottom line on culture. A entrepreneur, a founder, a director has nothing to do with culture. Nothing. They provide the climate that then creates a culture. Okay. So what climate can a coach or a CEO or a founder, what can they do to then let the culture decide itself? Because you don't want to force a culture upon anybody. You want to create a climate that you want to see as a leader, and then let the culture organically grow in itself. So what is that you want to see? Openness, trust, communication, vulnerability. Can we talk about our fears, our hopes, our desires? Can we do that even with healthy conflict? Healthy conflict is good. An organization that does not have conflict. And so sometimes we'll see that even up on interviews. Usually within the first minute, I will know if the person will fit into our culture. And I'll know, and the climate that we've actually provided. So I don't know what your specific question is, but that's what it is create a climate of openness, of trust, of communication, of vulnerability, and hire action-oriented people. So like, for example, did you pay for your own school? How did you pay for your own college? How long did it take you to go to college? Were you in the military, for example? Were you an athlete? Those types of individuals have been on teams, and I'll give you a great story. I remember one of our first hires. It would have been the first 4 or 5 hires. And she actually came from WSU, and she had done some undergraduate research in chemistry/chemical engineering. And it was beautiful. It was chromatography, and she was great in the interview, very professional, just amazing. And she had this experience in academia in doing research, which I think is very crucial. I think at WSU is called Research 499 or something. And I did that as an undergrad at WSU as well. So very important. But I asked her, I said, have you ever had a job outside of academia? And she said, well, she was kind of embarrassed. And she said, yeah, I've worked at McDonald's, but I wasn't going to put it on there. I guess I was kind of embarrassed. I almost hired her on the spot. And she'd worked there for like 4 or 5 years, worked herself up to manager. But, you know, that's how she paid for school. And she had a job previously. So those are the things that you look for. Are you a team player? Do you have a work ethic? Do you show up on time? Are you action oriented? Are you accountable? Are you responsible? All those typical things that we try to raise our own children in being, those make good team members.
That's great. I'll stay quiet for a moment so that if folks on the line have a question that they can get it in here.
I'm mostly just thinking about the fact, Shane, that you wouldn't have hired me. I wasn't an athlete or in the military. I was lucky that my parents were able to pay for college because I had a scholarship. It's really fascinating. I've heard you mention some of those ideas before about how you look and pick talent. Although I did work at a crappy steakhouse for a while.
Well, that matters.
By McDonald's.
You know, and what also matters, I'm going to put my old person glasses on, Ginger. Okay, now I can see who it is. Okay, so what also matters, Ginger, is that you earned a scholarship. Those don't come for free. You know, a scholarship doesn't come for free. It means you did something to earn it. And that's what you're looking for, is you're looking for a results-oriented person that actually, you know, somehow earned their way in through life and it wasn't entitled. And obviously, Ginger, and I've met you face to face and it's wonderful, but you have a great position at the University of Idaho, and maybe you're meant to be there instead of at one of my companies. So everybody has a place in this world.
That's true.
I absolutely believe
You're making
that.
it sound great, Shane. So I don't know. Maybe in the future.
Well, you know, and this is this is my attitude. I think everybody is passionate about something. And this actually includes picking team members and making sure you pick them to put them on the bus, but also putting them in the right seat on the bus. I believe everybody is passionate about something, and a true leader will help that person find their passion. They absolutely will. Maybe it's within your own organization. Maybe it's not. We have had people in our organization that they probably just weren't meant for industry. And you know what? They do very well in academia, very, very well. And it's not fair to them or us to place them in the wrong seat or the wrong bus. And so I think it's crucial to a leader. I always want my people looking for the thing that's best for them, including if it's going to be leaving my organization. And I support that 100%. I'd be glad to take more questions. Yeah, I see. I'm going to leave my glasses on.
Hi, my name is Hassan. I'm a computer science faculty in University of Idaho. So I have a small startup that I'm struggling to establish. I worked for 20 years in computer science technologies for bioinformatics, okay? So my question to you is this. The goal for the company is IT technologies, but the main focus is in bioinformatics tool for genomics research and biotech research. Do you think a company such as this with this kind of focus has a good prospect in Moscow, Idaho? I have connections to many universities who would be willing to use our tools, data integration tools, data analysis tools. What we design is kind of like an automated pipeline generation tool. So you want to do some analysis. So you, in English or in visual tools, you can express what you want. The system can put together the pipeline automatically and connect the analysis to produce the result in a fraction of a minute. For example, in the University of Idaho, one of my colleagues designed a data science tool spending about 1.5 years. We could recreate the tool in 2 days. So that saves time on the part of the investigators or the companies, that then they can now try hypothetical question that would it happen? Okay, can I do this? What would happen if I do that? It's a throw-away cost. So that's what I'm asking, that do you think what kind of market it could have as a business? Academia, yeah. I know it would help.
Yeah, Hassan, hey, thanks for the question. And certainly, you know, I'll say as much as my 2 cents. I mean, obviously proteomics and genomics is a really hot area right now. Mm-hmm. And actually just this morning, I had a call with an investment banker in private equity. I kind of tend to run in those circles now. And I mean, genomics and proteomics companies are, without balance sheets and without revenue, they're selling for a lot of money. So I don't know what the specifics are of your organization, but private equity, venture capitalists, and investment bankers are certainly looking at those organizations. So Hassan, I don't know exactly what you're providing and what your, I guess your pathway to revenue. This is what I say when I invest in companies. What's your pathway to revenue? What's your pathway to profitability? And you have to show me what those things are. What's your pricing model? What business segment are you in? Who are your competitors? You have to do all those specific things. And then before I invest in companies, and I invest in startups like yours, for example, but I actually ask some specific questions. Who the investors are, what risk and reward are they willing to put up with? Because again, I want them to have as much risk as me. And so if the founders, are they willing to, for example, quit their current job, start this startup, and then help me, and then I'll invest? And if they're not willing to do that, then why would I risk it? So I have questions like that.
So do you think I could talk to you one-on-one?
Sure. Yeah. Hassan, the best way to do that is just go find me on LinkedIn. Are you on
Okay.
LinkedIn? Yeah, I would love to help and have more conversations with you about that.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
Thank you.
That's really great. Thank you so much for that.
Any other questions?
I've got a bit of a question. My name is Chris Marks. I'm a professor in biology. I'm curious, with a business like yours, is it founded upon having kind of like particular intellectual property that makes the type of analytical techniques that you have unique? Or as a service company that you can do what is commonly possible, but just do it better, faster, cheaper, have like particular connections? Like kind of what provides for the kind of company you have the competitive advantage that allows you to kind of continue to succeed?
The latter, better, faster, cheaper. Mm-hmm. And so one of the, not always, but most of the organizations that I actually, with Needham Capital, for example, that I actually invest in, I make sure that they actually have competitors and they have at least a 25 to 50-year history of business models of that actually business segment, because we know it works, right? So that's why it's sometimes difficult with some of these very, very early startups where they have an idea, and a lot of that comes from academia, right? They have an idea and there's no history, there's no pricing model, there's no precedent. That is very, very difficult for me personally to invest in, because if there's no history of a business model there, then I know very little about it. And so I'm not saying venture capitalists won't do that. I'm not saying they won't get an equity stake. And some of the companies I invest in, I also get an equity stake as well. So I certainly, go along those lines as well. But that's kind of what I'm looking for, is I know the template that works for my companies. And Chris, when you say my company, I have 4 or 5, but you know what? The business models are all the same. We have competitors. We know the business segment has existed for a long, long time. And we do it better, faster, cheaper. We have I call that the value triangle: quality, price, speed, or turnaround time. That all businesses are kind of related like that. And that's called your value. Okay. So what is your value to a client or a customer in that value triangle? That's what I call it.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, I think I'm actually next aboard for these startup stories.
You bet. That's right.
Awesome. The company I'll be talking about is the opposite, where it's a totally new product based upon IP, and there isn't a good track record at all. And it sucked, because even though like the promise is so large, different people's appetite is quite different for, do you want to get in behind something that doesn't have a clear analog? It just doesn't kind of fit many of the other pictures.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not saying it's not possible. I mean, that's how Amazon and Facebook and Google probably all started. People thought these were the craziest ideas, but here's what we know: those are the minority. Those are the minority. And I mean, even taught in entrepreneurship or classes, is we should teach how to do for the majority. Like I said in my presentation, if you want to own a coffee shop or a restaurant, go work in a restaurant or a coffee shop. I don't care if you have a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, or a PhD. Go learn that industry, then get your entrepreneurial skills, and then go start it with all that, with that background. But doing the opposite of just having this idea and then all of a sudden just hoping that you'll get venture capital money, that's a tougher sell. It's a tougher sell.
Yeah. Indeed. Thanks.
I look forward to your presentation too, Chris.
Sure.
And reach out to me on LinkedIn as well. I love to network. I love to help. I love entrepreneurs no matter what they're doing. So I think it is truly the American dream, and I get to live it. I want everybody else to live it.
I sent you a note on LinkedIn. Thank you.
Oh, good. We're connected now?
I'm not connected because I could not send you a connection message. They sent you a message.
Okay, got it. Excellent. Well, thank you, Hassan. Any other questions? I think this is the most the most beneficial part of all this.
I guess maybe I got a second one, maybe.
Sure.
When you got started, how you're saying now as like Needham Capital, you're looking for certain particular kinds of scenarios to be able to get started. What did it take in terms of you being able to get things off the ground in the first place?
Grit, passion, and perseverance.
I mean, I guess I'd say, like, was it like, did you bring your own funds to the table? Did you have to bring outside funding to get it going? I mean, like those sorts of questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally privately funded. And I brought in my own funds. And here's another question that I ask when people ask me to invest in their companies. I actually had a call today with a university professor. They have a great idea. I'm not really sure about the business model and the pricing model yet, but they have a great idea. And I said, well, how are you funded? And they told me about a couple of grants they had, so on and so forth. And I said, how much money have you put in personally? And it was zero. And so I said, so you haven't put in any money, but you want me to invest? I said, I won't. That's another one of my questions. So those are just, I want somebody to have skin. If I'm going to have skin in the game, you're going to have skin in the game. And I think that was very important, Chris. We see a lot of our competitors not have as much skin in the game. Here's the deal. I cashed in all my funds from Pfizer. I wasn't a wealthy person back then at all. I cashed in all my funds from Pfizer. I was very grateful. The stock had done pretty well. So I had some funds. I cashed in my retirement money, and that was it. And why was that important? Because I had a 3-year-old daughter. My wife at the time chose not to work, and I had a baby on the way. I had to feed my family. It had to succeed. It had to succeed. If I had venture capital money or private equity money, big deal. So you got to have skin in the game. And I think all team members really, and that's why we have generous bonus programs and equity stake programs in some of my other companies, that you make it very generous, like they have skin in the game too. So it makes them part of the bigger picture and part of being a big team.
That's actually a great, I'm going to make a segue into, we have a question that my licensing associate, Karen Stevenson, Dr. Karen Stevenson, wrote in. And she asked, would you or have you considered translating one of your companies into an employee-owned company?
Yeah. Now, where's that question come from?
Sorry, it came in the chat box from my licensing associate, Dr. Karen Stevenson. Yeah. She doesn't have the best video connection, so I'm asking it on her behalf.
So I think those are great questions. And all I can say for some of my current companies in the works and in newly inception, stay tuned. Because I think that can be a really good business model, Jeremy. And so stay tuned. That's all I'm going to say. That's all I can say at this point.
All right.
I've got some really exciting things going on right now that are really super exciting. And so stay tuned, Jeremy. But that can be a great business model. That it also comes with challenges. It can be a great business model.
Yeah, absolutely. I can certainly imagine some of the challenges, but I can imagine too that the folks might have high level of engagement if they were working in an employee-owned
Well,
company.
let me, for those that haven't actually taken risk or been an entrepreneur themselves. And so I'm going to give you an example. So, and I want you to remember this when we talk about employee-owned companies. And if you're truly willing to be a shareholder in a company and an entrepreneur, okay? So we're cranking along 2004, 2005, 2006, 2007. Things are not easy by any means, okay? But things were going well. And we actually had, at one of my companies at that point, we actually had some employees say, hey, can we have an equity stake in the company? And then 2008 and 2009 hit. I went without a salary for 2 years and there were no profits because we weren't making, we were trying to not lay anybody off. So there were no profits, right? So I went back to those same employees that wanted equity stake. And I said, are you willing to go without a salary for 2 years and no way to earn money because we're not making money if you become a shareholder? And they said no. So again, people that haven't gone through it before, they want the reward and not the risk. Okay. The reason entrepreneurs make money is not, and we think about this, we think about profit. People always think about the profit. What people don't think about is the loss. That's the most important part about a free market economy, is that risk of a loss. Sure, everybody wants to make money. Are you willing to take a loss? And most people aren't. What I found is most people are not willing to take that risk. So luckily I had a rainy day fund I made for my family and we could live off of it for 2 years. Things turned around because I put certain economics in place. I did a lot of marketing. I got a lot of new clients, so on and so forth. We survived. Our competitors didn't. It was last man standing. And so things were okay. But again, is everybody willing to go through that? Do they plan for that? Probably not.
Well, I think that's a great story. Well, thank you guys. Eric, I saw you unmute a couple of times. I'm going to put you on the spot in case you did have another question.
Well, this is a little off the topic, but with Elizabeth Holmes and Theranos in the news, I was just curious to hear what your thoughts are on that saga.
Oh my goodness. Well, here's the thing. That Theranos story, okay, I'm going to be very direct here. And I have friends, and I've been following miniaturization of devices, oh my goodness, for most of my career. I love it. I love capillary electrophoresis. I love micro LC and nano LC and all those things. I've been following it for years, right? And so I have colleagues that have actually questioned her at meetings before, like, they were like, wait a minute, we've been working on this for 20 years. And then all of a sudden you find a solution in 20 minutes and you get good data. So we were always skeptical, right? Here's the bottom line is the behavior at Theranos at the director level, at the executive level is absolutely disgusting. I'm going to be very direct, disgusting. They not only took advantage of shareholders and they took advantage of patients, but they took advantage of the public, social media, and I hope they get the justice that they absolutely deserve. It's not right. And here's what I'm going to tell people. You can act like that and you can have subpar integrity. Believe me, your communications will come out. All the fact, we live in an electronic world where nothing is deleted, and we're seeing that in that case. And you know what? Now she's exposed, and I don't understand the relationship between her and the other executive. I guess they were dating or married, or I don't understand it, but collusion like crazy. And that's just it's not good for anybody. And I like I said, justice, I hope, is served. So scientifically, Eric, I was always skeptical. And then when I started hearing the details, I'm like, this is absolutely disgusting. So I hope justice is served.
Well, on that note, you guys, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. I really appreciate you all for participating actively in today's session. And yes, please join us in October. We'll be featuring Dr. Chris Marks and a discussion about his startup company called NIP Bio. So we'll send out details along the same channels where we shared this information. And I just really, I thank you so much, Shane, for your time and for your viewpoints and for your stories today. It was really such an invigorating interview as well as an invigorating conversation afterwards. So thank you, especially for participating today, and we hope to continue to engage with you into the future.
Of course, of course. Thank you.
It
Go
was a good
Vandals. Thanks very
conversation.
much, Jeremy.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Yeah, good
Thank
Vandals.
you all. Yeah, you guys have a good weekend. Bye.
Bye-bye.